Sudah malam? Atau sudah tahu?
Movie begins in Semarang, Indonesia, in 2006. Nisa's father, Bakti, enters her room and asks if she has finished her work. Nisa requests a glass of water and a meal, but Bakti insists she can only have them after completing her homework. Nisa complains that she has been studying for a long time and is tired, to which Bakti responds, "It's better to be tired from studying than to swallow the bitterness of ignorance." He asks, "Do you want to be ignorant and useless?" before reiterating that she can leave only after finishing all her homework. He then warns her not to embarrass him and walks away, leaving Nisa in tears. Upset, Nisa rushes to her tent and Bakti's harsh words echo in her mind. But she suddenly notices that the door to her room is open. After some time, Bakti returns to Nisa's room but finds it empty. Growing anxious, he steps outside to look for her, and suddenly, Nisa leaps from the roof. Bakti rushes to the window and is horrified to see her impaled on a pillar. 10 years later, we are introduced to Maya, Fatah, and Amir, who have failed their exams, and Maya, in particular, is stressed because their lecturer is Bakti. They attempt to avoid Bakti, but he confronts them and instructs them to meet him in his office within 15 minutes. On their way to Bakti's office, Maya tells her friends that Bakti's daughter committed suicide, and when Amir asks how she knows, Maya replies, "Everyone knows about it." Fatah then asks about Bakti's wife, and Maya explains, "They say it was an accident. That's why he uses a walking stick because he got injured while trying to save her." Amelia then joins them and asks if they have met Bakti yet, to which Maya replies that they were waiting for her, so they could see him together since they are afraid. Bakti tells them that he has been teaching for 20 years, and they are the only ones who have failed his class. He expresses his disappointment, saying, "How am I supposed to face the others?" He then informs them that, starting Monday, they must attend a short semester class at 5:30 p.m. Amelia asks, "Isn't it too late to hold a class at that time?" To which Bakti responds, "Monday at 7 p.m. and the boys agree. Bakti then turns to the girls and asks, "Do you have any problems with that?" To which they hesitantly reply, "No." As the others leave his office, Amelia picks up a teddy bear from the floor and gives it to Bakti, who takes it from her and signals for her to leave. The next day, Maya's father scolds her, saying that he agreed to let her pursue that major, so she should graduate no matter what. Overwhelmed, Maya begins to have a panic attack, and she takes her antidepressants to calm herself down. Next, we see Bakti picking up his medication at the hospital, revealing that he is unwell. Now, while on his way to the university, a biker nearly hits Bakti. Ignoring the close call, he continues walking toward a cycle rickshaw. However, he notices that his teddy bear has fallen on the road, and as he goes to pick it up, a truck strikes him, dragging him away. Meanwhile, the four friends arrive at class, wondering why Bakti called them so late. Amir checks the clock and notes they have 5 minutes, and Maya, saying Amelia is closest to Bakti, asks if she believes he pushed his daughter so hard that she ended up committing suicide. Amir asks why she keeps asking about it, and she replies she's just curious. Amir asks what she'd do if she knew the truth, and Maya explains she heard his daughter was forced to study constantly, never allowed to leave her room, eat, or drink, and was severely punished if she didn't finish her work. Amelia replies that she doesn't know and doesn't have the guts to ask, to which Maya says it's ironic that Bakti teaches them about behavioral modification, yet it's his own behavior that needs to be changed. Now almost an hour has passed, but Bakti still hasn't arrived. Amir suggests they go home, but others suggests they wait for some more time. As Amir turns to leave, they suddenly hear the sound of Bakti's walking cane, causing them to rush back to their seats quickly. Bakti enters the class, and they greet him with a good evening, but he quietly approaches his desks and informs them that no one is allowed to leave the class for the next 2 hours until it's dismissed. Bakti approaches the blackboard and starts writing, and during this, Maya receives a text from her friend saying Bakti passed away at 5:37 this evening due to an accident. Terrified, Maya urges her friends to check the group chat, and as they do, they too are shocked by the revelation. Maya hands Fatah her mirror, who drops his pen and then bends down to check, and to his horror, he sees Bakti's feet not touching the floor. In shock, he tells the others that Bakti is a ghost, and at that moment, the light flickers, revealing Bakti's ghostly form. Terrified, Maya runs out of the classroom, and the others begin to leave as well. But Bakti stops them, asking, "Where are you going?" causing them to freeze in fear. Amelia says, "It's already late," to which
Sudah
Bakti
malam.
responds,
Atau
"Is it
sudah
late?
tahu?"
Or have you noticed?" Terrified, Feta turns towards Bakti, only to be horrified by the sight of him towering so tall that his head touches the ceiling. In a panic, he shouts for everyone to run. And outside, Maya desperately tells Zainal that Bakti is in the classroom. The others soon join them, and Maya urges Amelia to tell Zainal what they saw. However, the guard goes to his cabin, then comes out and says, "I want to attend Bakti's wake." He asks, "Do you want to join me or not?" As I'm going to lock the gate. They all decide to attend Bakti's funeral, where Amelia overhears a woman saying, "It was a hit and run," and Bakti's face was destroyed. The four of them sit quietly inside, but after a while, a gust of wind blows through, causing the cover over Bakti's face to lift, exposing his features, and Feta comments that it's terrifying. The next day, Gita informs them that they can continue the class with her starting tomorrow, but warns that she doesn't want to hear any rumors about Bakti's ghost haunting the place. Maya insists she's not lying, but Gita counters, saying she should analyze the situation logically and points out that Bakti was already infamous as a killer lecturer, so their subconscious minds might be reinforcing the belief. Maya retorts that it wasn't her subconscious mind's fault, but Amelia intervenes and reassures Gita that they understand. That evening, Gita hears Bakti's voice say, "Don't take my students from me." Startled, she spins around, but no one is there. However, when she turns back toward the refrigerator, she sees his reflection on its surface. Panicking, she quickly looks behind her again, only to find no one on the table. Confused, Gita turns towards the refrigerator, but Bakti says they are all his responsibility. And to her horror, she sees his ghost on the table. Bakti appears right behind her, and as Gita tries to flee, a showcase topples over her. The next day, Amelia and Maya go to check Bakti's emergency contacts, only to discover that there are no contacts listed in the records. However, Amelia recalls seeing photos at his house that suggested he lived with his mother and daughter. Overwhelmed with fear, Maya steps out of the office, but to her horror, she sees Bakti standing in the hallway. Panicked, she runs away, and when Amelia steps out to check, she finds no one there. Meanwhile, Bakti's ghost pursues Maya as she flees in terror, and while running, Bakti suddenly appears in front of her, causing her to lose her footing and tumble down the stairs. Her friends rush to Maya, trying to calm her down, and after a while, Amelia also arrives. Maya tells her that she saw Bakti and that he was trying to catch her. And when Kiki reminds her that Bakti is dead, Maya insists she's telling the truth. Amelia reassures Maya, saying, "We're here for you." And as she helps her up, Kiki informs them that Gita has fallen into a coma. They all head to the hospital to check on Gita, where Maya suggests they pray together for Bakti's spirit to rest in peace, and also for Gita's recovery. Amir comments that Maya is obsessed with strange things, much like Feta, and Amelia interrupts, proposing they meet with Sarif. They share the entire story with Sarif, who advises them that it should be done in private if they wish to pray together. He cautions them not to let the other students or faculty members know, as it could spark rumors about the campus being haunted. Sarif adds that, whatever is happening, it originates from their minds. That evening, Sarif brings an ustads to the campus, and they all pray together. But after a while, the lights in the classroom begin to flicker. A strong wind then starts to blow, and to their horror, they see Bakti's ghost entering the class. After the prayers are over, Fata asks if Bakti may be trying to convey something. Maya replies, "We shouldn't have left the classroom that night, as Bakti himself said for the next 2 hours, like his daughter, who couldn't leave her room until she finished her work, but she left and died." Amir tells her to stop suggesting nonsense, to which Maya counters, saying, "You saw it yourself when I was chased by Bakti, and what kind of suggestion could put Gita in a coma?" Just then, Bakti's voice calls out Amelia's name, and soon after, Maya's. Amelia says, "It's only the two of us," but to their shock, Bakti calls out to Amir next, followed by Fata. Bakti's voice commands them to study, and Maya, overwhelmed by fear, cries out, "I don't want to die!" To which Amelia calms her down, assuring her that no one will die. The next day, Amelia asks her mom if she believes in ghosts, to which her mom replies, "People used to say that ghosts wander around because of unfinished business they left in the world." That night, Amelia searches the internet for information about Bakti's daughter's suicide and finds an article about it, stating that Bakti chose to remain silent about her death. Suddenly, her attention shifts to her bag, and she recalls a day when Bakti was scolding Emir. As she rushed to help him, Bakti looked at her bag and said, "Nisa." Amelia reads a neighbor's statement, which says that Nisa was always studying, and her father never allowed her to play. This makes Amelia wonder if Nisa's suicide is still a heavy burden on Bakti. Amelia meets the neighbor, Tatanga, who confirms that Nisa committed suicide, and that everyone in the area knows about it. She adds that after Nisa's death, Bakti's daily routine consisted solely of teaching and then going home. Tatanga expresses her fear, saying that the spirit of a strange man like him usually doesn't rest in peace. Meanwhile, Amir enters Fata's room, and he quietly goes and stands in a corner. Fata finds this a bit strange, but he ignores it and continues reading the comic. Soon after, the lights go out across the campus, prompting Fata to pick up his phone and begin walking toward the door, which suddenly shuts on its own. Panicked, he calls out to Amir and turns around, only to find that Amir is no longer there. Fata looks around, saying, "Stop joking around," but his attention is drawn to the curtain, and to his horror, he sees a ghostly figure standing there. Meanwhile, Amir lights a candle in his room, but as he turns, the flame suddenly goes out. Just then, he hears the sound of Bakti's cane, and as he starts to leave, the door slams shut. Terrified, he turns on his phone's flashlight and scans the room, and to his shock, he sees one of his books floating in midair. Frozen in fear, Amir watches as the books suddenly fly toward him, hitting him and forcing him to crouch down to protect himself. He bends down to retrieve his phone from under the bed, but to his horror, he sees Bakti's legs, and when he looks up, Bakti appears before him. Just then, Fata bursts into the room and pulls him away from the room. Meanwhile, Maya hears Bakti's voice echoing in her head, and disturbed by this, she tries to flee the hostel, but the door is locked. Panicking, she rushes back to her room and locks herself inside. However, the next moment, she is horrified to find herself back in the corridor. She then hears the sound of Bakti's cane approaching and sees him coming toward her. Terrified, Maya turns to run, but Bakti appears on the other side as well. In sheer panic, she tries to back away, but Bakti appears in front of her again. In her desperate attempt to escape, Maya stumbles and falls down the corridor, impaling herself on a pillar. Meanwhile, Amelia visits Bakti's house, and as she peeks inside through the window, Bakti's photo suddenly falls from the wall, startling her. At that moment, her phone rings, and it's Emir, calling to inform her of Maya's tragic death. They all gather outside Maya's building, mourning her tragic death. Afterward, they go to her room, where they discover her antidepressant medication, something they were unaware of until now. They are filled with guilt, feeling that this tragedy could have been prevented if they had paid more attention to Maya. Amelia then spots Maya's notebook, in which Maya has drawn Bakti's cane. She shows it to the others, and as they take in the drawing, Erin steps out of the room, and Fata, visibly shaken, says, "We shouldn't have left the class that night, and now we've been cursed." He says they have to do something because Maya committed suicide, traumatized by Bakti, just like they were. He asks Emir if he also saw it, and when Emir agrees, Fata insists that it's true that Bakti curses them. Amelia speaks up, saying she doesn't believe Maya committed suicide. She admits she doesn't know if it's related, but points out that Maya's death mirrors Nisa's. Fata, in shock, asks if she's saying their lives are at risk, and in frustration, he adds, "I don't want to die." Amir attempts to reassure him, and once Fata calms down, he says with conviction, "I'm sure only Gita can answer all of this." But Amelia suggests they go to Bakti's house as maybe they can find something there. The three of them break into Bakti's house, searching for clues, and Amelia discovers a letter from Bakti that reads, "I am okay with not being able to walk forever. For you, that accident broke my leg and killed your mother, but it was better than losing you too. Yet, in the end, you still chose to go because of me. Suddenly, a gust of wind hits her, startling Amelia, and as she moves, her foot lands on a teddy bear. She bends down to pick it up, examining it curiously, and her attention then shifts to a few packets nearby. She snaps a photo of them with her phone, but gets disrupted by a sound from the other side. Meanwhile, Amir is startled when he sees Bakti's reflection in a mirror. However, when he turns to look, no one is there. On the other hand, Amelia asks Fata if he found anything, and he responds that he discovered a phone, but it seems inactive. Just then, he notices something is wrong with Amelia, and Fata cautiously approaches her, but to his horror, he realizes she has turned demonic. Panicked, he rushes to hide behind a table, nervously asking why she looks so creepy, and after a moment, when he peeks out, he sees Bakti's ghost standing before him. The three rush out of the house, and Aaron bumps into Kiki, and as the others catch up, Kiki scolds them for their actions. Amelia questions the association's efforts to help, to which Kiki explains that it's still the holiday season, so nothing can be done for now, dismissing their concerns as nonsense. He adds that despite Bakti's reputation as a killer, all his students passed, except for them. Frustrated, Amelia asks if he really believes everything makes sense, to which Kiki insists it does, explaining that Mrs. Gita developed PTSD after her husband died and had gone off her medication in the days leading up to the incident, and Bakti's death triggered her trauma. Maya, on the other hand, was suffering from stress and depression due to the pressure from her parents. He reveals that Mrs. Gita has regained consciousness and that her son shared all of this with him, urging them not to link these events to Bakti. Angered by his response, Fata strikes Kiki, shouting that he knows nothing. Emir intervenes and pushes Fata away, and Amelia then warns Kiki that if he won't help them, he should at least stay out of their way. Later, Fata sits in his room, crying, when suddenly the pages of his comic book turn on their own. Perplexed, he stands up and cautiously approaches the comic, and as he picks it up, he is horrified by what he sees and instinctively throws it away. However, to his shock, the comic slides back toward him. Meanwhile, Amir notices Bakti's cane moving toward him on its own. Terrified, he frantically tries to open the door to his room, but the cane suddenly vanishes. A moment later, it reappears behind him, and Bakti grabs him. However, Amir quickly finds himself back at his door and slaps himself to snap out of it and regain his senses. On the other hand, Amelia is praying in her room when she notices the teddy bear lying near the mirror, and to her horror, she sees the same teddy bear on the other side of the room. But when she turns to check, the teddy on the other side vanishes. Confused, she suddenly hears Bakti's voice urging her to finish her studies. But when she looks around, no one is there. However, moments later, the door to her room swings open on its own. Scared, Amelia steps out to investigate, and to her shock, her mother's sewing machine starts operating on its own. Trembling, she cautiously approaches the machine, and Bakti's voice commands her to come back, freezing her in place. Gathering her courage, she pulls the curtain, and Bakti warns, "The lesson is not done." Terrified, she pulls the curtain again, but this time, Bakti is nowhere to be seen. That evening, all three of them decide to go to the classroom and make a firm resolve not to leave this time. They sit in the classroom and begin waiting for Bakti, and after some time, they spot Bakti through the window, walking toward the class. The sight fills them with fear. However, when Bakti enters the classroom, they can't see him anymore, and only hear the sound of his footsteps echoing in the room. Afterward, they watch in horror as a piece of chalk rises into the air and begins to write on the blackboard. It spells out behavioral modification before the chalk falls to the floor. Amir then feels Bakti approaching him, calling out his name, but he gathers courage and sits there. Bakti then walks towards Amelia, calling out her name, and Amelia also sits still. At last, Bakti moves towards Fata, and seeing him, Fata screams in terror and runs out of the class. Amelia receives a text from Bakti's neighbor, revealing that Noor Janine, Bakti's mother, is his only remaining family. Amelia asks if he's sure he wants to go now, to which Amir replies that they have no choice, saying, "The sooner we finish this, the better." They then finally leave the classroom, and meanwhile, Fata is shocked to find himself back in the class. Terrified, he rushes to leave, but the door slams shut, and in panic he begins screaming for help. Overcome with fear, Fata sits there crying, and as he sobs, he notices a drawing of Bakti slowly being created on the blackboard with chalk. Trembling, Fata pulls out his phone, turns on the flashlight, and looks toward the blackboard, and the chalk falls to the floor after completing the drawing. Suddenly, Bakti begins to emerge from the drawing, and Fata, terrified, starts apologizing to him in a desperate attempt to stop whatever is happening. Meanwhile, Nurjanin tells Amelia and Amir that since Nisa's death, Bakti has been unable to stop blaming himself and let everyone talk about him, that Nisa died because of his stern teaching. Amelia asks, "Are you saying Nisa didn't die because of that?" In a flashback, we see Nurjanan approaching Nisa, offering her some biscuits. She then leaves there, and shortly after, Nisa's epilepsy flares up, causing her to fall from the balcony. Nurjanan explains that Bakti chose not to speak up because he believed he deserved to be punished for Nisa's death. And since then, he has focused solely on teaching. Meanwhile, Fata manages to escape the classroom, but Bakti's ghost chases after him. However, as he turns a corner, he freezes in terror when he sees Bakti's ghost standing in front of him, its size growing larger. Panicked, he turns and runs in the opposite direction, but once again, Bakti's ghost appears before him, steadily moving closer. Overcome with fear, Fata stumbles and falls, and as he crawls, Bakti's ghost appears in front of him once more. Fata somehow manages to run, but after a short distance, Bakti's ghost grabs his leg, causing him to fall, and drags him away. Amir and Amelia return to the school, and, as they try to open the classroom door, the teddy bear falls outside. Rushing inside, they find Fata in a corner, strangling himself. But after a tense moment, he suddenly collapses. Just then, the classroom lights flicker on, and Fata regains consciousness. Amir, shaken, says, "It's not just in our minds." He adds that this might not be about Bakti's dedication after all, but it's his ambition that turned him into a ghost. He realizes they've broken the rules twice, and at that moment, Bakti's ghost approaches and begins to hit him with his cane. However, Amelia sees that Amir is actually hurting himself. Amelia rushes to stop him, but Amir forcefully throws her aside. As Amelia gets up, she sees Bakti approaching her. Panicked, she grabs her bag and searches for the teddy, but finds it missing. Bakti, in a fit of rage, presses his cane against her throat, and desperately, Amelia says, "I know Nisa didn't die because of you." Hearing this, Bakti's anger intensifies, and with a swift motion, he lifts her into the air, his fury growing. Meanwhile, Amir sees Fata as Bakti, and Fata sees Amir the same way. Disoriented and terrified, they attack each other in a frenzy, each convinced they are fighting Bakti. Bakti releases Amelia, and at that moment, Amir stabs Fata. Horrified, Amelia rushes to intervene, but Amir forcefully throws her out of the classroom and then collapses. As Bakti's ghost approaches Amelia, she musters her strength, crawls toward the teddy bear, picks it up, and says, "This isn't your fault that we failed." She admits it's all our fault. She says you were a good father and a good teacher to all of us, and apologizes for disappointing him. She continues, "From the beginning, I never believed you were a bad person, and you only wanted the best for Nisa and for us." Hearing her heartfelt words, Bakti pauses and recalls how Amelia was always a diligent student, one who reminded him of Nisa. Amelia looks up and realizes that Bakti's ghost has vanished. In the next moment, his spirit gently places a hand on her shoulder, smiling warmly. Nisa's spirit then calls out to him and smiling. He walks toward her, and with tears in her eyes, Amelia watches as they both move toward the light. A few days later, Amelia reflects, "I now understand that for spirits to cross dimensions, it takes immense energy, and Bakti had that energy, driven by his dedication, ambition, and love." In 2024, Amelia became a behavioral psychology lecturer at her university. While delivering a lecture, she notices Bakti's spirit watching her from a distance. And the movie ends here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.